The prelude to this Malaysian story begins with a narrator saying that each jene tells a tale of 3 souls. For every burial, a male sacrificial slave gets thrown into the base to become the living pillar for the jene. Then a female sacrificial slave gets tied at the top of the jene. This slave gets left to experience a slow demise from starvation and exhaustion. The narrator wants us to imagine the wrath of the sacrificed souls. Such wrath gives rise to the horrific curse of the jene. We see a man running away from something in fear. There is a vicious storm brewing. He yells out to someone named Surya. It doesn't take long for the man to get swept along the ground by a gigantic head that seems to have been produced by the heavy clouds. Jumping into the film, we see a man sitting and drawing. Many of his drawings lie on the ground beside him. Soon 2 young ladies approach him, with one of them saying he's getting better. He is Arjuna, greeting them as B and Hana. They look at one of his drawings, making him say it's an ill omen. Arjuna adds that the Melanau tribe believes owls, bats, and snakes to be bearers of calamity. Shortly after, a man with the title of Dr. Sani appears. B follows him into a building, where he tells her it has been a long time since he's gone on an expedition. She tells him she has an important project. They don't want to miss out on even one jene, but Sani says he's not interested in it. He asks her if she is sure it's a jene. Once she asks what if it could be, the doctor continues the snowball of questions by asking if she is wasting his time on an assumption. Thus, he starts to walk away, prompting B to hold up a book. She asks him where is Sani Othman, who wrote the book she holds. This question brings him to a halt. Following this, B walks with Hana, who mentions a certain expedition team's disappearance. B, however, says they don't know what happened to the team. She hopes an expert will help them. This segues into a scene of 2 boats sailing along a river. The scene shifts again to someone's YouTube channel. The man recording points the camera at himself, saying he will show the tank that was said to hold the corpse of a Bangladeshi officer. Back to one of the boats, we see that man telling Hana about his channel, which is called Tommy Ghost Seeker. Hana excitedly shows the channel to her friend, but her excitement momentarily fades when she sees B is worried. Hana says Tommy is the one who entered the haunted house near their office. Yet what her friend is telling her is not grabbing B's attention. Her mind is elsewhere, as she observed the locals going about their ways while the boat keeps moving. When the group arrives at a location, we see Arjuna with them, asking a woman if this is the village head's house. She ignores him as she steps inside her house and closes the doors, so he asks the same question to a man passing by on a boat. The man does not even look at Arjuna. B tries to do the talking, only to receive the same treatment. As she searches alone, an unsettling elderly woman suddenly grabs her to tell B she isn't welcome there. She adds that B needs to get out. Listening to her, B returns to the group. This is the moment the village head meets them. He is Madhuri, telling the visitors to follow him. The man mentions someone named Nula, who has gone crazy. Her father was a shaman who vanished when she was a kid. Now she is spreading spells everywhere. Madhuri warns the group to stay away from her. Approaching the village head's home, they see none other than Dr. Sani there. After they all eat, B asks Madhuri if he has any news. He says he tried searching, but the forest is big. Even the locals sometimes get lost in there. B wants him to hire more people and hands him a respectable amount of cash to do it. The lives of those who disappeared are her responsibility. Going outside, B notices a young girl who waves at her. She also gestures for B to follow her. Therefore, our main character is kind to not ignore the girl. At the dock, the girl presents a dragonfly to B prior to walking away. Switching to the group, Madhuri tells them his assistant will bring them to the place he calls the Old House. It is the village tradition that the village head and his family are not allowed to go to the Jene. B witnesses how the girl walks into the water. It prompts her to jump in to rescue her. A pair of hands grabs her leg there, and B sees they belong to the girl she rescued. She thrusts herself at B like a fierce animal, causing her to wake up on the dock. Arjuna is there to tell her everyone is waiting for her. Joining the group, B tells Hana she saw a girl. Speaking of her, she is there to put her hand on B, who turns around to see her smile. She gets her friend's attention to say that this is the girl she was talking about, but she is present no more. This makes Hana think B is messing with her. The next scene has the group walking through the forest. As Madhuri's assistant brings them to a certain point, he says they will be on their own from now on. After he leaves, they arrive at a house and absorb its secluded nature. Sani finds a book that he starts to read. Back in the village, we see the elder woman saying she will not let them into the house because there is a doorkeeper there. She has disobeyed them and the spirits. The elder woman calls her Madalu, who is focused on ruining the house. From this, we shift to Tommy recording the old house. He tells his viewers it has been abandoned for years. Abandoned, however, does not mean it's not occupied. It belonged to the headhunters, he says. They used to hang skulls in the area where he is filming. After a dreadful storm, the skulls vanished, and all of the house's occupants lost their lives. Soon Tommy sees smoke in his camera view that does not exist in reality. Looking back at his camera, he sees it's not there anymore either. As he keeps walking, a ghost comes at him. When he directs the camera at himself, we see Arjuna standing behind him. He asks Tommy why the latter didn't start the generator. Arjuna is the one to find the generator to start it. Now that they have lights, B showers in a very traditional way by pouring water on herself from a pot. Someone is watching her from the crevices of the door. She opens it to see Tommy, waiting to use the room. But unlike B, the water is too cold for him to bathe in. This is a man who's gotten used to luxury. He notices the lamp is flickering, and as he looks at it, his reflection in the mirror turns ghastly. Following this, we see Sani reading the book he found. It says that a person who is sacrificed on the jene will be bound to his master and his descendants forever. Sani notices there is a torn part on the bottom of the page, and the writing does not continue on the next one. Moving along, we see Tommy holding a device called a ghost meter. He tells his viewers that if a place is haunted, it will start giving a warning sound, and a light will turn on. Thus, he activates the device, which soon starts doing what he said it would. It is true, he claims, that a virgin ghost roams there. Pointing the camera at himself, Tommy asks his viewers if they would prefer to be served by a virgin or the opposite. He prefers someone who is experienced, thinking virgins cannot serve well. Then he goes to bed and turns his ghost meter off. We watch it turn back on by itself, going into the maximum detection range. As Sani sleeps, he dreams of a woman in a camp. Approaching her, he admits he is not a good husband. He calls her Surya and says he is sorry. Once he says he found a certain manual. She tells him it is the key to everything. He came to bring her home, Sani claims. In a short time, her face turns monstrous, making the doctor wake up in a panic. Afterward, Hana awakens because she wants to use the washroom. She is scared to go alone, so she wakes up B, who instantly rolls on top of Hana to frighten her with a ghastly face. Thankfully, this was a nightmare Hana wakes up from. In reality, B is peacefully reading beside her. They both head to the washroom. While B descends the stairs, a hand grabs her ankle. It is Hana, hiding behind the stairs for some reason. She tells B the person ahead is not her. Looking ahead, B sees a person wandering there. When the lights shatter, a spirit rushes at B, and she wakes up outside, surrounded by trees. How she appeared there is a mystery. She escapes from that area, only to nearly fall onto spiky trees. Hana is in a similarly inexplicable situation. She wakes up to find herself sunken in mud. Sinking more, the girl starts to panic. She finds a twig to hold on to, but it's not strong enough to support her. Therefore, Hana sinks completely into the mud. She emerges and grabs onto a nearby carcass to free herself from this nightmare. Eventually, the group locates B in a place close to Hana, who soon joins them. It is no surprise that she starts to cry. Later, Sani wants them to stop wasting time, because they have to go to the jene site. Opposing him, Hana says this place is haunted and wants to turn back. The doctor does not stop her. If she wants to leave, she can. Hana asks Arjuna and B if they want to come. Yet no one wants to abandon this mission. After they go their separate ways, the elder woman arrives at the old house. The group eventually arrives at a place with more greenery. In there, they find a huge totem, which is their jene. B says it is 833 years old. Sani thinks it could be the oldest jene in the world. Arjuna wants to do a radiocarbon test on it, but B refuses. She says they can't touch anything if they want it certified. She made an agreement with the Native Customs Council. Switching to Hana walking alone, she finds people whom she quickly learns are her friends. Such a discovery disappoints her, and she tells B they have to go home. Once they finish their work, they can, says B. Subsequently, Hana walks toward the jene with curiosity. Shining a light in there, she sees many upside-down bats. Much scarier, though, is the appearance of a horrific screaming face. This causes the girl to back away in fear. When Tommy starts to record it, the bats fly out. B assures her friend that she merely saw bats, but Hana tells her what she saw. Tommy makes fun of the scared girl whilst calling himself fearless. Later, Arjuna pretends to be studying the jene very closely. While no one is looking, he uses a knife to carve out a sample of it. Elsewhere, we observe the elder woman engaged in a ritual that looks like voodoo. Back to the group, a storm is brewing above them like the one we saw in the beginning. Eerily, liquid starts to leak from the jene. Madhuri sees the storm from the village. Drawing near the jene, B is confused by the sounds it is creating. Once the sounds stop, she turns around. Yet the wind pushes her into the liquid that leaked out. It enters her, and she receives images of the girl she met earlier. We learn her name is Madalau. She holds the hand of an elderly man nearing his demise. He says she will always be his daughter, and she tells him that he is her sole family. He also claims Madalau was a baby when he found her. The man used to pray often, wondering why he wasn't given a daughter. Now that he has her, he knows she is a blessing from the gods. Turning to his son, the man tells him to make sure Madalau lives free. The moment he passes away, his daughter cries. After those emotional images, B is shocked upon having received them. Later on, we see Arjuna sketching the jene. Something is wrong with him. He fiercely sharpens his pencil with his knife, and B notices. He emits beastly sounds when she tells him to stop. Without realizing it, Arjuna's knife has transitioned from his pencil to his finger. Sani heads his way to slap the crazed man back to his senses. He looks at his finger in severe shock, before struggling in pain on the ground. While Sani tends to him, B watches the struggle with a slight smile. We know she would never normally behave like this. It is the liquid that entered her that has created such a mental shift. All this chaos prompts Hana to urge B to leave, and they all agree to do it. Soon the jene leans towards B, but thankfully does not crush her. Once she is out of its way though, it comes crashing down. Arjuna's legs get claimed by the magnificent structure. If that wasn't bad enough, a creature breaks free from it, scaring Hana into fleeing to the forest alone. Tommy chases her while Sani uses a pole to move the jene from Arjuna. B just watches casually like it's nothing. Eventually, Hana arrives at the village, where she hears the elder woman engaged in her ritual. She peeks into her home and observes the woman doing her voodoo. Sensing that she is being watched, the woman exits her home to look around. Yet Hana is hiding from her. By mistake, the poor girl impales herself on an exposed nail. Suddenly, Madhui surprises her with his presence. He holds her mouth, wanting her to be silent. In the next scene, Hana occupies his home, where he tends to her wound. He says he will meet Nula tomorrow. That is the elder woman's name. He also tells her the group will be returning to his home, meaning it would be best for Hana to stay there. As he says this, we see it brings some discomfort to the girl. Left alone, she wanders around Madhui's home until she finds a chest that contains paperwork. They are grants concerning state land. Along with this, Hana finds 2 cell phones and a camera, which she starts to play. The man recording the footage says any jene that has withstood the trial of time must be preserved. Surya is there, the woman from Sani's dream. While Hana watches this, hearing their screams when their doom arrives, we see Madhui descending the stairs near her. She encounters him, and he tells her to pretend she didn't see it. Discomfort now turns into fear as Hana starts to back away from him. Madhui claims that Sani's ex-wife was there. She tells him this footage is proof that the people disappeared. Hana adds that this is all due to Madhui's desire to sell the land. Hearing this makes him angry and Hana jumps out the window. She has a hard time running from him because of her injury. The wicked man follows her with a knife. Switching to the group, Sani helps the crippled Arjuna walk. The latter wonders where B is. Soon they return to the old house, and Arjuna gets placed there. Then we shift to Tommy, who eerily finds a hand buried in the earth. All of this is overwhelming to him, but he starts recording anyway. He tells his viewers that these are the expedition members who were said to have disappeared. The reality, though, is they are deceased. Tommy gives his condolences to their families and promises to bring the corpses back to them. Once he points his camera back to the ground, he sees it is now empty of the deceased. As he backs away in fear, he trips on a branch. Back to the previous 2. Arjuna tells Sani there was a bat and a snake. This worries him, for they are omens. Since he wants to search for B, Sani decides to do it in his stead. However, Tommy is the one who finds her first. He is happy to the point of hugging her. She hugs him back with an expressionless face. Sensing something wrong, he looks at her. Unfortunately for the ghost seeker, this is his last time seeking the paranormal. B uses her new power to drain his life away until he looks like a prune. Afterward, we see Nula performing her ritual. She pleads to the spirits to save the innocent lives. They don't know what they are doing, she adds. She pleads for them to be freed from Madalau's curse. Shifting to Sani, he finds Surya, hugs her, and cries. He remembers looking at his phone, seeing her message to him. She told him she found what he was looking for. Sani looks at her photo, saying to himself he will search for her until he finds her. Back in the present, he covers his ex-wife with his coat. It's not a proper burial, yet it is all he can currently manage. Later, he sees B walking, so he is forced to tear himself away from Surya to follow her. Returning to Hana's struggle, she continues to run from Madhui. The poor girl falls, allowing him to catch her. He says the forest belongs to him. In the meantime, Sani sees an owl looking down on him, coupled with Arjuna telling him he saw a bat and a snake. This completes the calamitous trio, the former mentioned in the beginning. Sani directs himself at B, telling her they need to leave. But she doesn't listen to him, for she has a vision of Madhuri being vile with her friend. Thus, she starts to run to that area. Alas, any attempt at rescuing Hana is futile, because the foul man stabs her. In a short time, he witnesses the trees opening near him. We see B standing on the jene as she transforms. Seeing Madhuri, she uses her power to bring him to her. He flies toward her before slamming into the jene. She levitates off of it to stand near him. The village head tries to fight her, but of course, he is powerless against the one whom the force of the jene entered into. B grabs him with one hand to hold him up. At this moment, Sani approaches to witness this astounding act. B starts walking away with Madhuri, while touching the jene. She lifts the gigantic totem with her power. She places the man in its base, and says this is her revenge. Fearfully, Madhuri asks what he has done wrong. As she brings the jene down to crush him, he escapes in time. Afterward, several ghostly beings start to enter the area. Their presence makes buildings appear. This event brings forth a flashback involving Madhuri. We see a slave get thrown into a pit that will serve as the jene's base. This is followed by several people moving the jene to fill the pit with it. The spectacle has many observers, including Madhuri. When the massive structure gets put in place, the slave gets crushed by it. A man starts talking to Madhuri, telling her she is the village head's favorite slave. Therefore, she will join him as his slave in the afterlife. But Madhuri tells the deceased village head son that he was there to hear his father's will. In turn, he claims she is like his little sister. However, she is also the favorite slave of the village head. This is why he has chosen her as the sacrifice. She calls him a liar and tries to run away, yet she gets caught. The next scene shows Madhuri suffering while being tied to the jene. A dragonfly lands on her lips, which she uncannily eats. An unknown amount of time later, Madhuri curses all of them for the sins she has never committed. She wants none of their future generations to be safe. We see a snake coiled around the jene. Meanwhile, Madhuri and Sani awaken from the horrific flashback they both received. Madhuri looks at his knife before throwing it away. A ghastly bee is there to scream at him. Subsequently, we see Arjuna at the old house. He finds the torn piece from the book Sani found. Nula now walks within the forest, telling the gods that their servant, her, is begging them to free the people of Madhuri's curse. Back to the site of the jene, B drags Madhuri to it. Sani stands to block her, but she forcefully slaps him into the jene. She tells Madhuri she could smell the blood of the old village head flowing in him. Opposing her, Sani tells B to let him go. This prompts her to tell Madhuri to inform Sani how he slaughtered Hana, and how he let Surya rot in the forest. Sani gets angry, demanding that Madhuri tell him what B is talking about. B becomes wrathful and breaks his leg. Once she turns to Sani, the spirit exits her. She urges Sani to run, because she fears Madhuri will return to take control of her. Sani directs himself aggressively towards Madhuri with a shovel, demanding to know what he has done to his wife. The village head tells him he saw her becoming deceased in front of him. He wants Sani to remember this is his land, and no one can escape from it. Sani looks like he is going to take his life, but what stops him is Arjuna's arrival. He says he found the missing text. Connecting it to the text of the book, the message reads, "The ties would not loosen when descendants exist." Sani looks at B, perhaps thinking she is the last descendant. He rushes to her to help her walk. As Madhuri crawls to reclaim his knife, a grotesque bee looks at him. She pushes Sani out of her way again. At that moment, Madhuri uses his knife to stab the jene, which results in B getting wounded. He does it a few times for the spirit of Madhuri to leave her completely. Since the spirit approaches him, he defends himself with the knife. He attacks the cursed totem to make her bleed. In turn, the spirit of Madhuri uses her power to bring Arjuna and B to the jene. Sani is privileged not to be among them. He sees Nula, who tells him to follow her if he wants to live. She also says the slave must bow to her master's wishes. Her powers are linked to the jene, but Sani does not want to abandon his friends, so he asks her to help him save them. Nula informs him that Madhuri's spirit will not be appeased as long as the descendant is still alive. Soon many spirits emerge from the top of the jene, and Madhuri laughs at the misfortune that awaits his enemies. Arjuna and B get taken inside the totem by the spirits. While Madhuri laughs, he gets stabbed by Sani from behind. He tells the wicked man that Madhuri may be his slave, yet he isn't. Due to this crucial action, Sani's friends get released from the jene. Sani sees a light appear in the sky before rain arrives to wash them all. Most importantly, we observe a smiling Madalau walking near them. She is finally free, after an unknown amount of time as a slave of the totem. Later, we see Sani is back in the village. He types into his laptop, finishing what he started. We hear the voice-over of Arjuna, saying the jene they found was very different from the rest. He continues by saying many have sacrificed their lives to ensure the jene stood tall and was known throughout the world. When we see the man talking to a crowd, he hopes the jene and the legend of Madalau will remind them all that the lives of people are the most valuable of all. Once he finishes his speech, he and B hear faint screaming from a distance. The screams belong to Hana, who has remained alive, struggling elsewhere to give birth. After she does, the narrator tells us that he who continues by saying sacrificed their lives to ensure the jene stood tall and was known throughout the world. When we see the man talking to a crowd, he hopes the jene and the legend of Madalau will remind them all that the lives of people